You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt, coming to you on June 1st of 2022. I don't have a ton going on with individual stories this week, but we're going to go back to the division breakdown for the second one of the year. And then we'll end with players of the week like we always do. But before we get to all of that, how are you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. Had a good Memorial Day. I hope everyone else out there had a good Memorial Day too. It's been a pretty nice week. Glad to have a short week. Being off work Monday, and I'm ready to talk about some baseball.
Yeah, it was nice to have that extra day for sure of not having to go to work. But we'll go ahead and jump right into the division breakdown. We'll go ahead and start in the American League East with the Yankees leading the division by 5.5 games over the Toronto Blue Jays. You got the Tampa Bay Rays in third place, 6 games back. And then you got a steep drop off to the Boston Red Sox, who are 11.5 games back, and then the seller of the division being the Baltimore Orioles, 14 games back.
Yeah, so starting off looking at the Yankees, they've been, they haven't been rolling along quite as much as they were, but they've still been really solid. Their last 10 games are just 5-5, which is still fine. I mean, if they go 500 the rest of the year, they're going to be in the playoffs. But they've been their pitching's been outstanding. Between Nestor Cortez, Garrett Cole, and even Jameson Taillon's had a really nice year so far. Jordan Montgomery's been pretty good. Their starting pitching has been really what's carrying them. Their bullpen has been pretty good. It's been a lot of unexpected contributions. We've seen this month that they've lost Chad Green and Aroldis Chapman both to the IL. And Aroldis Chapman was really struggling to start with, and but guys like Michael King and Clay Holmes have really stepped up for them and been everything they could have hoped for. So this team and their offense is finding a way. Aaron Judge is playing really well. Stanton's been good and bad. He's been a little streaky, but he kind of always is. And you look at them as a team that they got their bats. They got 7 guys in their that are everyday starters so far that have a WRC plus above 100. This team's just kind of rolling along right now.
Yeah, the Yankees are just looking like the team that most people expected them to be the past couple years. And that starting rotation was really a big question mark coming into the year. A lot of people didn't know what you were going to get out of Jameson Taillon. You didn't know what you were going to get out of Luis Severino. You didn't know what you were going to get out of Jordan Montgomery. Was he going to be able to take that next step? And I think all of them have pretty much exceeded expectations so far, on top of Garrett Cole being the guy that we pretty much expected all along. The Blue Jays, the team in second, which they had started off kind of slow, but went 8-2 this past week. They're starting to close that gap a little bit. You're starting to see guys, Vlad's been pretty good, but he's been picking it up a little bit late as of late. George Springer's been swinging a pretty good bat. That pitching rotation has come around. Jose Barrios had a really rough last start against the Angels this weekend, but his couple starts before that had been really well. It just seems like that team's starting to round into kind of what we expected a little bit more. To start the season. And then the Rays, they're just the Rays. They're going to find a way. They were playing 500 baseball over the last 10 as well. They're going to hang around, and they'll go on some run later on that we didn't expect them to go on and pull into, be in that division race right at the end.
Yeah, looking at the Blue Jays first, I am a little worried about their starting pitching because Kevin Gausman's been unbelievably good, and then Alek Manoah has been really good too. But then beyond that, they really haven't been all that good on the starting pitching front. You would like to see Jose Barrios get going, but he's really been bad this year. He's got a 5.01 FIP and a 7.16 expected ERA number, which is insanely bad. Doesn't get the ball on the ground, and he's really not getting swings and misses on his curveball, which has been his, that's his pitch, is this curveball. And I don't know if maybe he's struggling a little bit with a different ball this year. I don't know what it could be, but he's been horrendous so far, not getting strikeouts at all. It's been bad, giving up tons of home runs. But their bullpen's kind of middle of the pack. Jordan Romano has been really solid as their closer. David Phelps has been good. Adam Simber's been good. Their bullpen's been pretty solid. Their lineup, they're going to get going a little bit more than they have so far. As you said, Vlad Jr. hitting 249, 342, 438 on his slash line. That's still a 120 WRC plus, but he's only got a 256 batting average on balls in play. You would fully expect that number to come up. I am a little bit worried about Bo Bichette and Lourdes Guriel Jr. Those guys have both had trouble with their approach at the plate. You look at Bo Bichette, a 4% walk rate, 25% strikeout rate on the season is a struggle. Matt Chapman's been incredibly unlucky on his batted balls, too. So, his offensive numbers look pretty bad, but I really think that if he can continue to hit the ball exactly like he has so far, that he'll actually get going some. It's just a little bit of bad luck. And, George Springer has been George Springer at the plate. He's been your typical George Springer. So, this is a team that I think they're showing some signs of getting going a little bit. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're ahead of the White Sox right now tonight. I think they will end up being the challenger to the Yankees in the division. And then you mentioned the Rays. They're kind of doing Rays things, like you say. I think that one really cool thing for that team is that every year it seems like when they lose a top flight starting pitcher, they find another guy. Like, they lose Blake Snell, and then Tyler Glasnow becomes this insanely good pitcher. They lose Tyler Glasnow to his Tommy John surgery. Now Shane McClanahan is just this insanely good pitcher. Uh, which, he's a top prospect, obviously, but I mean, Shane McClanahan's been one of the best pitchers in the big league so far this year. Um, he's got a 183 xFIP, and his ERA at a 2.01 in 58 innings is just unbelievable. You look at this team, and I think they could use a little bit more depth in their starting rotation. They do such a good job of mixing and matching that it really doesn't matter as much for them as it does for some teams. And then offensively, I mean, you look at Wander Franco. Manuel Margot has a 154 WRC plus. I know he's missed some games, but man, that's incredible. Brett Phillips has actually been really good. He hadn't been great at the plate, but he's one of those guys that he's such a good defender. If he can just be good enough at the plate to not be an automatic out, he's gonna be a pretty solid player. He's already put up one WAR this year, and some of their guys still haven't gotten going yet. Like Brandon Lau hasn't really gotten going yet. Randy Arozarena hasn't really gotten going yet. So I really like this Rays team. I don't know if they're going to challenge the Yankees, but I expect them to challenge that wild card spot yet again.
Yeah, they'll find a way to be in that wild card spot, and I wouldn't be completely surprised if they were able to make a run up there and do the division. It's just something the Rays have always done. They always seem to find some way to surprise us that way. But looking at fourth in this division, I think a lot of people expected the Boston Red Sox to be way better than they are, and it's really come down to that pitching staff. If you look at the offense over the past month, they've been the second best offensive team in baseball behind the Dodgers. And the pitching staff has been, where is that? They were the 23rd ranked pitching staff over the past month. Hopefully you're getting the boost when you get Chris Sale back. Eovaldi's looked pretty good in his last couple starts. Pavetta's pitched pretty decent in his last couple starts, but overall, they don't give you a ton of confidence overall in that rotation. And even in the bullpen, I think they just also lost Matt Barnes to the 15-day IL. Not that he's been that great at all this year either. But they just need to find either who they want to keep in that pitching staff or get some other guys in there or hope that the return of Chris Sale can really help them out. Because right now being under 500 and doesn't look like they even have a fighting chance in the wild card spot, let alone for this division.
Yeah, my outlook on the Red Sox is a little bit better than yours is, I think, except on just the thing that really worries me about them is I don't think you're going to end up seeing them be able to make moves later on at the deadline. Because I think if they were able to get 2 or 3 bullpen pieces at the deadline, this team, their starting pitching, I think, could be good enough, especially when Chris Sale comes back. Because Nate Eovaldi's been good. He's gonna be good. He hadn't had a great year so far, but we've discussed him in the past. It's just he throws so many strikes. He's gonna have 1 or 2 games where he gets roughed up a little bit with hard contact. But if Chris Sale can come back and be, I won't say that he has to be Chris Sale of, peak Chris Sale, but if he's pretty good, Rich Hill's not horrible. You look at Waka's not horrible. You got some veterans. Garrett Whitlock's been really good as a starter. So, you look at this as a team that I think their starting pitching could pieced together enough to be good enough. I think the problem you have here is that you can't have a pitching staff and the starting pitching that's just good enough, and then have a bullpen that's been like theirs has been so far. I mean, their bullpen has been horrible, and I think that's been a big problem for them. And then you look at their lineup, and I think part of the problems that the Red Sox had was at the start of the year they weren't hitting either, but they've really picked it up at the plate, especially with the resurgence of Trevor Story. He had a horrible April, but his last month has been extremely good. He's up to 1.4 WAR on the season now. His WRC plus has gone all the way up to 111, and then you got your big three hitters, your big two main guys, and Rafael Devers is having an MVP caliber season so far. He's up to 3 WAR on the season already. Like to see him walk a little bit more, but he's been extremely good. Xander Bogaerts has been, obviously as typical for him, underrated but very good. A 150 WRC plus, not a great shortstop defensively, but he's able to hold it down to a high enough level to be able to play there. And between those two pieces and the rest of their pieces, Franchi Cordero has actually been playing pretty well for them too. You kind of look at that and you think that this team could be better than their record is right now. But, as you say, it's going to be hard for them to pass the 3 teams ahead of them. They really needed to not have a bad start in order to get there. And, I think this team's fixable, but, you can't put yourself in too big of a hole.
Yeah, and I just don't see the moves being able to fix them coming soon enough. Like they'd have to do those moves pretty soon, at least in my eyes, if they want to be able to catch the teams above them, to try and compete for it. But quickly wrapping up with the division, we got the Baltimore Orioles. They've kind of just been what we've expected. They do have some highlights this year. Austin Hayes has looked really good. Trey Mancini's back. He's batting over 300 with a almost 38% on base percentage. He might be a guy they even look to trade at the deadline. I know he means so much to that team and to that community, but it might be the time to sell now and get yourself some pieces for the future. But you've seen guys like Cedric Mullins really struggle. Santander's struggled for the past couple seasons. Ryan Mountcastle was a guy who was really good for them last year. He's been under league average so far this year offensively. And that pitching staff just, they lost John Means. They've been pretty decent over the past month. Still is like the 11th ranked pitching staff, but there's just not a ton of guys there that you're looking at for the future. That are going to be that really fit your timeline and that have been great.
Yeah, just to close things on the Orioles, they have some of their prospects coming up. I mean, obviously, we talked about Adley Rutschman made his debut this month, and it looks like Grayson Rodriguez won't be too far behind. He's been absolutely annihilating the pitching in the minors so far this year. So I do think that this team's going to be – they're not going to be great, but they're going to be entertaining here going forward over the rest of this season, just because they're going to have some young guys that are going to be fun to watch. So they've gone from a really bad team that has no fun players to a bad team that's got some fun players and might be worth watching a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, let's transition over to the AL Central. We have the Minnesota Twins still leading this division, about 4.5 games above the Chicago White Sox. You got the Cleveland Guardians in third, 5 games back. The Detroit Tigers in fourth at 9 games back, and then the Kansas City Royals at the bottom of the division, 12.5 games back.
Yeah, the Twins are still, up here. I'm not super surprised about that, but their pitching's been a little bit better than expected. Joe Ryan's been really good for them. They got it from the Rays last year in the Nelson Cruz trade. Sonny Gray has come back now, and he's pitched extremely well so far. He's looked like an ace. And this is a team that they lost Chris Paddock, who had looked good to start his season. So that was a bummer for them. But, they're pitching. Bailey Ober's pitched pretty well. Dylan Bundy, his ERA doesn't show it, but his peripherals show him being more like, a number 3, number 4 type pitcher. He hasn't been bad at all. And then their bullpens pitched pretty well. Yohan Duran, if I can say his name right, has pitched extremely well, out of that bullpen, and he's looked like a breakout star. So this team's been pretty interesting, on the pitching front, and then offensively, they've had some contributions from guys who were expected to contribute, and then they've also gotten some contributions from guys who weren't exactly expected to contribute. You look at Trevor Larnock. Trevor Larnock leads this team in WAR. And through 32 games, he's only played 32 games. He leads this team in WAR. He does have a 4.13 BABIP, but 155 WRC plus. He's been good defensively. 1.5 WAR. Max Kepler has had a renaissance this year. He's been really good. Um, Byron Buxton's dealt with some injuries. He's been a little bit disappointing in the slash line. He's hitting for a ton of power, but only a 204 average, 281 on base. Some of that might be a little bit of small sample size stuff because he has a 195 batting average on balls in play, and there's no way possible Byron Buxton's going to run that batting average on balls in play with his speed. Pretty much anytime he hits the ball on the ground is going to be a hit. But and then they got like Luis Arias has been really good. Jorge Polanco's having a pretty decent year, even though his average is a little bit low. Carlos Correa had missed some time, but he's gotten back into form a little bit. This team's still looking good. I don't think they're quite as good as their record is, but in this division right now, as we'll talk about these other teams' struggles, they've been the best team in this division so far, and I still think the White Sox could and maybe probably will catch them at some point, but Minnesota's definitely put themselves into full-on contender mode so far.
Yeah, Minnesota's looked really well, especially like you mentioned, without having Buxton. They've been trying to, he's dealt with some hip injury, and they're giving him like 1 day on, and sometimes they'll do 2 days off, or they'll give him 2 days playing and then another day or two off. So they're trying to manage that, and then he's not being able to play defensively. So they've been playing Nick Gordon out there. Even Royce Lewis, who's a career shortstop in the minor leagues, they threw him out in the center field the other day. He actually made a great play, crashed into the wall, and then had to leave the game because of it. And I think he went on the IL, if I'm not mistaken. But they've had some they've had some what am I looking for? They've had some contributions from players that you wouldn't expect. And I think that's the thing you're going to have with the team that you're trying to get into this division. You need the guys like Kepler to come back. You need a breakout from Trevor Larnock. A lot of people were expecting that breakout of Larnock to be a guy like Alex Kirilloff this year, who had really struggled, and they've demoted him back to AAA. You needed to get Gary Sanchez back to even a competent offensive level catcher. You needed to bring Carlos Correa and have him be the Carlos Correa he was. And he's shown that as of late. I think he actually ended up going on the COVID IL this week. So I'm not exactly sure what his timeline is. He might even be back. But the Twins have really, overachieved in the eyes of what I thought they would do to begin the season. But the team that has really struggled in this division, that's been the White Sox. We've talked about them so much. Being, under 500, still playing 500 ball this past week, but 1 game under. They also lost Tim Anderson this week. He went on the IL. I believe it was for a hamstring injury. I could be wrong on that one.
I think it was groin, maybe.
Groin, that was it. But they've been a team that's really underwhelmed. If you look at the past month, they've been the 25th ranked team in all of baseball offensively. Now, their pitching staff, I believe, has been what we kind of expected. They're middle of the road 13th. But that offense has been so bad, and the defense even has been even worse for the White Sox. So they're a team that's really interesting, and there's already been some rumors about maybe La Russa being on the hot seat already.
Yeah, I mean, this team, I'm very conflicted on this team because on one hand, the amount of injuries they've dealt with has been unbelievable. I mean, they've dealt with missing time from pretty much every major contributor now that Tim Anderson's on the IL. Really, the only guy has been Jose Abreu out of their stars that hadn't really missed a lot of time, in their lineup at least. Tim Anderson's only played 40 games, but he just got hurt. Luis Robert's played 33 games. Andrew Vaughn's played 31 games. And then, you look at these players. All the following players have negative WAR on the season. Eloy Jimenez, who missed some time. Yohan Moncada, Yasmani Grandal, and AJ Pollock all have negative WAR on the season, which is pretty insane. And AJ Pollock is negative 0.6 WAR, and Yasmani Grandal, who has played all year, hasn't been hurt, has negative .4 on the season. He's got a 49 WRC plus. Now, part of that is BABIP fueled. He's got a 200 BABIP, but that's those numbers are really rough for this team. But there is some good news for them. Number one, they're only 5 games back right now, which if they were in any other division, they could be. If they were in the AL East the way they played so far, they'd be 15 games out. If they were in the AL West, they'd be 10 games out. In the Central, they're only 5 games out, and the team that they're chasing down is definitely flawed. And on the other hand, they're about to get some players back. They're about to get Lance Lynn back, and he's going to be a big piece in that rotation, which their rotation has had some really good bright spots so far because Dylan Cease has been really, really good. Michael Kopech's been really good. And you look at Lucas Giolito. It hasn't maybe been quite at Lucas Giolito yet, but he's been solid. And then if you bring back Lance Lynn and he's typical Lance Lynn, then your 1, 2, 3, 4 in your rotation is back to being really, really good. So it's kind of one of those things where I think that, and their bullpen's been fine. I mean, Liam Hendricks is coming around. Kendall Graveman stepped right in and been good. Andrew Bummer's been in his normal self. I think you could probably use a lefty out of that bullpen too. I know Bummer's a lefty, but maybe more of an elite lefty. But this is a team that they've really struggled at times. They just seem like they haven't gotten into sync. But they're in a division. It's a little bit like the Braves last year, maybe, where they're in a division that they're not going to go away. And if they get hot at the right time, they're definitely going to make a run. So it's a team that's tough to. It's kind of tough to judge, but I think they're going to be okay.
We expected them to be. It just I don't know when that they need to get those players back, and they need to get them back to the level that we expected them to be to start the season. And I think there might need to be a move or two made just to get more depth in there to help them out. But it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward. But the Cleveland Guardians at third, only a half game back of the White Sox. A team we probably expected to be right around 500 or just above. They're playing a little worse right now, but the offensively they've been middle of the road, and the pitching staff is what we kind of expected to carry them throughout the year. And the pitching staff really hasn't been all that great either. You look at the past month. Shane Bieber has a 4 ERA, only a 2.98 FIP, so that's not there. It doesn't back it up as well. With the peripherals, Cal Quantrill, he's been pretty decent so far, but McKenzie, he has a 2.12 ERA but a 4.11 FIP. They've called up Connor Pilkington, I think that's how you say it. Today.
Yeah, Connor Pilkington.
But he hasn't been that great, even though the peripherals say he's been better than that. Just this team overall with the pitching, I just don't see the depth there. Plesac's been horrible. He's at a 5.79 ERA and a 5.25 FIP on the year, and the xFIP still says he's supposed to have a middle 4 FIP. So I don't see with the Cleveland. The offense has not been great. We kind of expected that, but the pitching staff we expected to be a lot stronger, and they've kind of struggled so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of the problem with their pitching staff, Shane Bieber isn't the same guy that he was pre-sticky stuff ban / injury. I don't know which one it is, but he's still been really good. Don't get me wrong. But he's not the low 2s ERA super ace that he was. And then Zach Plesac, Aaron Savali, those guys really struggling, hasn't helped them at all. They are getting some pretty good contributions out of their bullpen from guys who I wouldn't have expected. Look at Trevor Stephen, has a 1.97 FIP. He's got he does have a 4 ERA, but I would expect that to come down. We all expected Emmanuel Clase to be really good, but Eli Morgan is another guy who's been really, really good for them in their bullpen. And Eniel Dos Santos De Los Santos has been really good for them in their bullpen too, along with Sam Hinges. So all these guys have been really, really good for them in their bullpen. And then you look at their lineup they've been good at times. They're kind of a high end, low end. Jose Ramirez, he's playing at an MVP level this year. He only has a 7% strikeout rate, which is insane. And a really low BABIP, but he always kind of runs that low BABIP. And you look at, I think Andres Jimenez and Owen Miller are a little bit They've been a little bit lucky this year so far, but Josh Naylor has played really well at the plate, 150 WRC plus. He's battled some injuries, but he's been really good. Stephen Kwan, he's cooled off and he's gotten injured, but he was, his plate discipline. This is a team that has really good plate discipline, but they're not, I don't think they hit the ball all that hard. I think that's part of their problem. They got some issues. One thing that could really help them out is if Franmil Reyes figures it out at some point. He's been horrible this year. Minus .7 WAR, and he's got a 56 WRC plus and striking out 40% of the time. So this has the look right now of a team that's going to run a record very similar to what they got so far this year. They're going to be around 500. If a couple of their guys turn it around, I could see them maybe challenging and contending to a certain level. They would really have to go grab some pieces at the deadline for me to think that could happen. But we'll see how far out of it they are by the deadline to see if that's where they might be, where they would look into that. But definitely, Cleveland's a team that they've been, they're kind of a middle of the road team.
Yeah, they are. And then two back marker teams. We have the Detroit Tigers at 9 games back. The Tigers have been really bad the past month. The offense has been the worst offense in baseball with a negative .6 WAR over the past month. So a month and negative WAR for your offense is not great. The pitching staff has been pretty good over the last month. I think they've been like 13th, but I wonder how much of that is actually led by Tark Skubal, who's been really, really good this year. A 2.44 ERA and a 2.04 FIP is really dang good. And you had injuries to guys like Matt Manning, who's pitched 8 innings for you this year. Casey Mize, who's pitched 10 innings for you this year. Eduardo Rodriguez, you expected to be, a lot better so far, and he's had a 4.3 ERA and a 4.04 FIP. I think you expect a little bit better than that. But when you're counting on guys like Bo Brisky to be a starter for you, who's got 7 starts so far this year with a 5.25 ERA and a 6.70 FIP, you're not looking too great.
Yeah, I mean, the Tigers have been a little bit disappointing. It's been just kind of one of those things. They've had some pretty good outcomes with some guys. Alex Lange just looked really good out of their bullpen. He's a former pretty high draft pick out of LSU. The injuries have really hurt them. Obviously, we talked about Casey Mize and Matt Manning. They've also had some of their key players on offense get injured a little bit. Baez missed some games, but at the end of the day, if Jonathan Scope in 2022 is leading your team in WAR, you're probably not doing so hot. So you look at the Austin Meadows trade. He's played 28 games, gotten injured. He didn't hit a home run. He did have a 114 WRC plus, but still, I mean, you go down the list and there's just not a lot that gives you any confidence in this team. A lot of it's still in the minor leagues, which it'll come up eventually. They've had a lot of bad outcomes from guys that had been pretty good in the past, like Jeimer Candelario has been really, really rough so far. And the one thing that I will say is Spencer Torkelson is starting to get going a little bit more. He's hitting the ball. He's making a little bit more consistent contact. His approach has been a lot better. I could see him really starting to turn around his offensive game going forward. A 264 batting average on balls in play is really low for him. He only has that 206 average, but his strikeout rate's been steadily coming down. His walk rate's been steadily going up. His counting stats have started going up too. He's at a 95 WRC plus now. He was really, really bad for his first few weeks. So that might be something to hang your hat on. Maybe he's starting to come around and get going. But a lot of the players that they counted on, like especially Robbie Grossman's been awful too. Really been disappointing there. So a lot of players that they've been counting on have really struggled, and I think this team is still, they still got some work to do before they get into contention level.
Yeah, we'll quickly wrap up on the Royals. Over the past month, they've had the worst pitching staff in baseball with a .7 WAR. Over the season so far, they've had some guys like Andrew Benintendi's looked really good. Bobby Witt started off pretty slow, but as of late, he's been really well. Hunter Dozier's had a pretty decent season as well. just overall, they're a team that we just didn't expect to be that great. I think Salvador Perez has really struggled this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Where is
he
he at on
has.
here?
He's been
Yeah,
really bad.
he has -4 WAR. Now I know a lot of that is offensive, but offensive stats. He's a 191, 226 on base, and a 362 slugging. He's a WRC plus of 64 so far this year. And Carlos Santana hasn't been much better. He's a 150 average, a 287 on base, and a 242 slugging percentage. Actually, he's been worse, a 60 WRC plus on the season. So, you expected Perez to be better. Santana, I don't know if we really expected much, but offensively, they've had a couple great pieces, or not great pieces, a couple good pieces with Benintendi and Witt, and that pitching staff has just really struggled.
Yeah, I mean the Royals you look at as a team that they've got some fun young players coming up. Obviously, we talk a lot about Bobby Witt. He started to play a little bit better. You look at MJ Melendez is up now. He's been playing really well since he got the call. You look at Edward Olivares has been up some. He's playing pretty decent. Um, they've got a couple guys that have been playing really well in the minor leagues. Nick Prado and I'm drawing a blank on the other guy that I can't pronounce his name.
Vinny
Pasquantino.
Pasquanicki or
Yeah, Pasquantino. Yeah, he's been killing it in the minor leagues. So they got some help on the way. They're pitching, like you say. I mean, this team just continues to bust with pitchers. Um, Brady Singer's actually been really good when he's pitched, but um, and their bullpen has some pretty good pieces too. Josh Stalmont's been really solid. You look at I think Barlow's kind of struggled this year, hadn't he? Yeah,
yeah.
he's got a 171 ERA, but a 419 FIP. So he could kind of go either way depending on what kind of stats you like to look at. But I mean, your ace is 39-year-old Zach Greinke. I mean, he's got 4 strikeouts per 9 right now. It's just not going to cut it at this level. They do still have some guys on the way pitching wise, but it's hard to say if they're gonna bust too. They've had a lot of high upside, high risk type guys in that system, and none of them have really seemed to figure it out at the big league level. So we'll see what ends up happening. But the Royals definitely, I think, out of all the teams in this division, have the least amount of hope for their future right now.
Yeah, it's not looking great for Royals fans. But let's transition over to the AL West, where we've seen the Houston Astros take over the division lead and actually pull away to a 5.5 game lead over the Los Angeles Angels. The Texas Rangers have actually taken over third place at 500, a 7.5 games back. The Mariners have fallen to fourth. They've now are 7 games under 500 and 11 games back in the division. And then the Oakland A's are at the bottom, 14.5 games, or 14 games back. Sorry.
Yeah, look at the Houston Astros. I mean, I'm not going to say we saw it coming, but that organization is very well run, and they're doing a great job. I mean, you look at their rotation. Every year they seem to lose a piece and then just get better. This year it's without McCullers, and I mean Framber Valdez has been extremely good. You look at his strikeouts per 9, not that impressive. Walks per 9, not that impressive. But he's getting the ball on the ground at a 66% rate, which is insanely good. 257 ERA at 63 innings for Framber Valdez. Justin Verlander's come back and just been Justin Verlander. Maybe not quite as many strikeouts as he was getting before Tommy John, but he's been really good. I mean, a 203 ERA. Peripherals don't quite back that up, but they still are thinking low threes ERA for him going forward the rest of the season, which is really solid. I mean, Luis Garcia's backed up his rookie year last year with a pretty solid job. Christian Javier has bounced between the rotation and bullpen, kind of like he did last year, and he's been solid in both roles. Their bullpen's been pretty good. They really haven't had good outings from I believe Presley. Yeah, Presley's been really rough so far this year on his peripherals. Now his ERA is still good, but he hadn't had the best start, and I believe he's also battled some injury a little bit. But this team, their lineup, they honestly have had a better outcome from Jeremy Pena than they would have gotten out of Carlos Correa, which is pretty insane to me. He's put up 2.2 WAR so far. And then they got Kyle Tucker, Jose Altuve, and Jordan Alvarez playing extremely well. Alex Bregman's not quite back at the 39 or 40 home run Alex Bregman from a few years ago, but he's been really good. And then really the only player that's really struggled for them lineup wise that, you know, outside of their catcher spot, which they could definitely use some help, has been Yuli Guriel, who looks like he might be cooked at this point. You know, he's up there in years now, and he's really, really, really struggled at the plate. So, but this team just kind of reloaded, and we expected them to a certain level, but I don't think we expected this from Jeremy Pena, and that's really what's boosted them into that, you know, into the number one in the division, and really being a favorite to challenge the Yankees in the AL.
Yeah, Jeremy Pena has exceeded expectations for sure. I was very skeptical of how they were going to replace Carlos Correa. I don't think that Pena is going to sustain this style of success. I think there's some regression probably due there, but he's done a great job, taking over that starting shortstop role for sure. Looking at the Angels, who are second in the division, they've fallen off recently. Noah Syndergaard struggled as of late, big time. Ohtani, you get what you get from Ohtani when he pitches. He's been really good, a 2.88 ERA and a 2.78 FIP over the past month. Patrick Sandoval had a really good start to the season the past month. ERA has been a little struggling, even though the peripherals don't back that up as much. They've had some good players, or some good bounce back of players offensively. Mike Trout's looked like Mike Trout. Taylor Ward's been a breakout for them. Rendon's been pretty solid, but I know he's battling an injury again. Marsh has been pretty decent. Jared Walsh has taken a step back from his last year, what he had. So you need him to kind of get that going a little bit more. Otani's been also a step back a little bit from what you expected. He does have 11 home runs, and it's but a 249 batting average and a 324 on base. You expect that to be just a little bit higher at least. So I think it's really just come down to the pitching staff has kind of been catching up to them. I know that bullpen's really struggled as of late. Syndergaard's not being with the level he was to start the season. Although they've offensively, there's the past month they were still a top 10 offensive team. They still need a little bit of progression there as well, especially if you lost a guy like Anthony Rendon for however long he's gone for.
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of that. Their pitching, we knew coming in that there was some variance there on their outcome from their pitchers. I think that they have a lot of guys who's pitched better than their ERA so far this year. It has been part of it too. But I think that you look at like Noah Syndergaard. He's been decent, but he's really just kind of getting back in the swing of things. You might look for him to pitch a little bit better as we go forward. Shohei's been really, really good on the mound. But I mean, Michael Lorenzen's been okay. You're kind of getting a good outcome from pretty much everybody. Reid Detmers, I think, could start to pitch a little bit better. I know he threw that no hitter, but he's not striking guys out, which is kind of surprising because that's kind of been his calling card in the past, has been his ability to strike guys out. And some of their bullpen pieces that they picked up that we praised a lot, like Ryan Tepera, has been really, really rough so far. Archie Bradley's been pretty rough. So this is a team that could go either way. You got Raisel Iglesias has pitched well, but his ERA is high. Even though I think he's thrown pretty well. Aaron Loop, kind of the same deal in that bullpen. So I think they're going to get a little bit better on the mound. At the plate, they've been really good so far this season, but there are a couple things that worry me. And number one is they're striking out a lot. I mean, even Mike Trout this year so far. Now he's been great. Don't get me wrong. But Mike Trout's striking out 26% of the time right now, and he's carrying a 360 BABIP. So, that does worry me a little bit for his ability to sustain what he's doing right now. Now, Mike Trout, even if his batting average drops 20 points, is going to have a 175, 180 WRC plus. So he's still going to be great. But the insanely crazy Mike Trout, maybe not quite what he has been so far. Taylor Ward's kind of the same way. His strikeout rate's not quite as bad, but his batting average on balls in play over 400. Missing Rendon's is hurting them. Brandon Marsh has been pretty good this year, but he's kind of another guy. 31% strikeout rate, 383 BABIP. He hadn't been quite as good as his numbers are showing. I do think Shohei will get it going eventually, but this team, if he hadn't already, he's got a 130 WRC plus. It's kind of hard to say he hadn't been getting it going, but Jared Walsh has started to look a little bit better lately too. But this team is probably a 87, 88 win team as they're currently constructed to me, which is kind of where they're at right now. Second place in this division and a probable wild card team. I mean, I kind of would say that's where they're at. So I think that I think they'll kind of continue to play like they have so far this year. I think this will be one of those teams that's really streaky, though. I think they'll win several, they'll have a 3 week period where they win, 75% of their games and then have 3 week period where they really struggle. So that's kind of the way this team I think is going to be. But definitely still pretty high on the Angels, and I don't think they're going to win this division over the Astros.
Yeah, would start to come into the season. I thought they were, but just I didn't think the Astros would look as good as they have so far, and the Angels have really cooled off as of late. And like you mentioned, they're going to be super streaky. They're going to be a team you're going to want to watch for a couple weeks, and then you're going to be pulling your hair out watching the next couple weeks. But a team that's kind of surprised me so far, the Texas Rangers being at 500. I thought they'd be worse than this, and they've really done it without their big pieces offensively doing anything, really. I mean, Corey Seager's a 232 average, a 302 on base, and a 438 slugging. He does have a 114 WRC plus. He's been their best offensive player per WAR this year so far, but those numbers aren't numbers you expect from Corey Seager. Jonah Heim's been really well, but he started to face some regression as of late. Adolis Garcia has not been good. I mean, Cole Calhoun has been pretty decent, and he's been hot as of late the past 3 weeks. Mitch Garver, he's dealing with an elbow issue, but he's still DHing. So I'll be interested to see how that affects him moving forward. Marcus Simeon, he's been really bad this year. You're talking about a point or negative .1 WAR so far this year. Nathaniel Lowe's been right there with him, but Simeon, a 199 average, a 266 on base, and a 274 slugging for a 60 WRC plus on the season. That's not great. But his past 2 weeks, he's batting 308 with an 815 OPS, and he finally hit his first homer. And he has 9 RBIs in the past 2 weeks. So, you could see Marcus Simeon that being the kickstart to his season that he really starts needing, because he's really struggled so far this year. But the Rangers have just overperformed in my eyes. Martine Perez has been really good, and I know we'll talk about him more later. Dennis Santana, a guy that came from the Dodgers who they DFA'd, he's been really good for them this year. John Gray's really struggled, but you've been getting good performances from Matt Moore out of the bullpen. Brett Martin has struggled, but his peripherals don't quite back that up as much. Overall, I mean, the pitching staff hasn't been as bad. I mean, there's definitely room for improvement there, but for a team that's 500, overall, it's not bad. And how bad their offense has been so far, it's kind of surprising me that they're at 500.
Yeah, this is a team that I think is I don't think they're a legit 500 team, but it's nice to see them have some early season success. You look at I think that Corey Seager is been better than he's kind of get credit for. He's only got a 230 batting average on balls in play. This team's been really struggling on balls in play, by the way. Adolis Garcia, 270 on balls in play. He's got a 100 WRC plus anyways, so his probably go up a little bit. He's a good defender. Jonah Heim, kind of the same thing, a 268 batting average on balls in play, and he's already been insanely good at the plate and behind the plate. So this guy's been really solid. But you kind of look at this team, and like you mentioned, Marcus Simeon really struggled to start the year. He started to get going a little bit, and there's really not that much there that just stands out as, oh my God, he's been horrible. I don't think I think he's just had some bad luck. He's just, he's not hit the ball quite as hard, or there's just something. Maybe he's pulling it a little too much, but there's nothing like super red flaggy about his start. Pitching wise, they're going to regress here. Martin Perez, he's not going to keep pitching at a 142 ERA, although I do think they have something here that is better than what they kind of expected to get coming in. Dane Dunning, I think, is actually pretty good. He's been a lot better than his 431 ERA. And then you look at the rest of the staff, and man, they're going to regress. Dennis Santana's not very good. He's only striking out 5 guys per 9 innings. His stats right now are good, but that's not going to continue. I could see John Gray maybe improving a little bit, but he hadn't really been able to stay healthy. I mean, most of this pitching staff is just not much there. So this team, it's a nice story that they're up there right now, but they're going to struggle going forward. They're probably the fourth best team in this division, in my opinion. They'll be pretty good bit under 500 by the end of the season, in my opinion.
Yeah, speaking of the fourth place team in this division right now, it's the Seattle Mariners, and I was a proponent or a guy that was really pushing for the Mariners, saying that they were better than a lot of people expected. Last year was kind of the start of it, and they've really let me down. And that run differential difference we saw last year has really come back, um, to really prove that they weren't as great of a team as they were last year. You've still had great performances from a guy like Ty France. This past month, he has batted .355 with a .427 on base and a .473 slugging, a .174 WRC plus on the month. Julio Rodriguez has been really good this past month as well. .309 batting average, a .339 on base, and a .527 slugging. You finally have been able to see that breakout that we were kind of mentioning that he was going to get to. With all those high strikeouts was going to come down some. This past month was still 25.2%, but there's still some room there. Adam Frazier's been pretty decent for them. Eugenio Suarez kind of really struggled, but overall, this team, I thought they would be so much better, and it just doesn't seem like they're ready for that jump. And it's basically what you've been saying all year long. They're probably a year away, and that kind of really seems to be the case now. You've seen good performances from a guy like George Kirby since he's come up. Logan Gilbert's been really good this year. Robbie Ray has really struggled. Matt Brash, they already sent him down and moved him to the bullpen in the minors so far. So it's going to be interesting to see if what the rest of the season brings, but it does seem right now that the Mariners are that next year kind of away.
Yeah, and I agree. The Mariners, they really needed every one of their young guys to immediately succeed for them to be a legit contender. But I think the Mariners should consider this season so far a success because they weren't going to make the playoffs. That was just kind of a in my opinion, that was kind of a pipe dream for them. I know they did great last year record-wise, but they were nowhere near as good last year as their record ended up being. But they've gotten real breakout from Ty France, even though he kind of broke out last year. He's been fantastic this year. J.P. Crawford has broken out this year. He's been really, really good. Obviously, Julio Rodriguez has had some immediate success, maybe not quite to the level some people were hoping for, but he's been good. Eugenio Suarez has bounced back pretty well. His strikeout rate's still a little bit high, but he's got a 123 WRC plus, playing solid defense, being back at third base. He's been solid. Um, and then pitching wise, I mean, George Kirby's come up and pitched extremely well. Logan Gilbert's taken that step forward that they were hoping to see. So that's two pieces that for the future that have been really, really good so far. I still don't love the Robbie Ray pickup from them this offseason. They paid him a lot of money for a guy that was probably coming off the best season he's ever going to have. He has been better than his 4.75 ERA, but his velocity's down a little bit. He's walking more guys than he did last year, even though it's not really a super big problem yet with the walks like it has been in the past. It's not as good as it was last year, and he's getting the ball's getting hit in the air a lot. He's giving up a lot of home runs, but this is a team that they're going to have guys come up and take lumps, and I think people needed to kind of understand that. Matt Brash is a perfect example. He's a guy that he probably shouldn't have been in the big leagues this year, and he's never been able to throw strikes, but he's got great stuff, and he's got to learn some. You just got to make adjustments, and it's good to get a cup of coffee. And the fact that Jared Kelenic didn't take that step forward really hurts them too. He was horrible at the big league level, 52 WRC plus, 0 WAR, 38% strikeouts, and then Jesse Winker being really bad has hurt them too. Although I don't know if he's going to sustain being this bad. I think he's better than he's played better than his 213, 312, 287 slash line has been. He's his plate discipline's still good. So definitely a team that has some good signs going forward. But right now they're probably a year away, especially being this far behind in the division.
Yeah, I don't think Jesse Winker stays being this bad either. They did get Kyle Lewis back as well, and he had looked really good, and then he got hit in the head and actually went on the concussion IL today. and they activated Abraham Toro, who had a good week before he got put on the IL. But it does seem like they're that little step away, for sure. But we'll look at the last team in this division, and that's the Oakland A's at 14 games back. The A's, we knew they were going to be bad. We've talked a lot about with their fire sale, the trade of Matt Chapman and of Matt Olson, and the trade of Sean Manaea. The one piece they do have left is Frankie Montos, and he's been really good. This past month, he has a 2.31 ERA, a 2.57 FIP, and a 2.50 xFIP. So all the peripherals back up what he's doing, and I expect that the A's are going to get a decent package for him when they do decide to trade him. If I'm the A's, I look to start trading him now to one of those teams that need to the Twins. Like, hey, are you gonna be the first one to jump on it? Like, you need a starter. Are you going to be the one to do it? One of these teams that needs that starter for the next year or so, like the A's should try jumping on Montas right now when his value is probably as high as it's going to be. Because if he has a bad couple months or he gets an arm injury and you get to the deadline, maybe you can't trade him at that point, or you're going to get significant less value for him. So it might be a thing that they should look at that early, because you already know you're going to be out of it, and somebody might pay the premium to get that guy in their rotation a month earlier than they normally would, or 2 months earlier than they normally would, just to help make that extra little push. You've had good performances from Paul Blackburn, even though the peripherals don't back it up. A 2.62 ERA with the 4.07 FIP. But then you have a guy like Lou Trevino, who has an 8.31 ERA and a 1.41 FIP and a 2.22 xFIP. So, the A's have used a ton of different pitchers. They're all around. There's some variety between them all. The offense has been historically bad. Like, the offense is terrible. The past month, their highest leader in WAR was Seth Brown at 0.5 WAR, and he had a 222 average, a 300 on base, and a 457 slugging on the month. That's not great at all.
Yeah, I mean, this team, you kind of hit the main points for me. I think pitching wise, Paul Blackburn breaking out a little bit, it's been nice for them. Frankie Montas, everyone knew he was good, and he's been he's probably been the best year of his career so far. They've also gotten a couple good outcomes out of the bullpen. AJ Puck is a guy who's a former top prospect and high draft pick that's done well so far this year. He's got to kind of look at going forward. And then you look at their lineup. And, I mean, Sean Murphy's been pretty good, especially defensively. I mean, a good defensive catcher. But his bat's been okay. 94 WRC plus. You'll take that from a starting catcher. But his BABIP's also pretty low, so you kind of expect his numbers to come up a little bit and kind of regret, or I guess get back to kind of, his BABIP's not going to stay that low all year if he continues to hit the ball like he has so far. So, that's a nice piece, and that's another piece they'll probably look to move in the future because of Shea Langoliers being in the upper minors, probably being ready soon. It's been nice to see Elvis Andrus actually make a contribution a little bit this year. His WRC plus over 100. That's been kind of fun to see. But there's just not a lot to like about this team right now. They're definitely, kind of full beginning of full-blown rebuild mode, which is not exactly what you like to see. So they definitely need to get going. And one guy that they would really like to get going is Christian Pache. His swing is just completely out of whack, and he's got a 36 WRC plus on the season, which is unbelievably bad. So this team definitely needs to get going a little bit with some of their young guys up at the big league level already, but it's mainly just kind of wait it out until your minor leaguers are ready. So
Yeah, and that's the situation they've kind of put themselves in, and we've highlighted that enough. It's going to be some rough, next 4 to 5 seasons for the Oakland A's, unfortunately. But this was supposed to be a full AL and NL division breakdown, but we went kind of long on this side. So what we will do is we'll just end this one at the AL division breakdown. We'll come back next week with the NL division breakdown. But I think it's kind of needed. We kind of needed to go more in depth on everything and hit on every team a little bit more than we probably were planning on doing. But before we wrap up this episode, you got anything else you wanna hit on?
well, we're gonna do our players of the week. So
Oh, that's right, players of the week. I totally forgot that part of it. So let's jump to that. Who do you have for your hitter this week?
So the hitter I picked this week was Paul Goldschmidt. He hit 409 on the average, 500 on base, 1,000 slugging, hit 4 home runs. That's in 6 games this week. Paul Goldschmidt's been absolutely unbelievable this year. He actually had another great game today. Another hit and 2 walks today. But he's got a 196 WRC plus on the season. He looks like Paul Goldschmidt did back in his Arizona days, like in 2015 when he put up 7 WAR. He looks just like that guy so far this year. And I tell you, one of the most underrated things about him is how good of a base runner he is. I know that, his stolen base numbers have come down from his peak, but still, Paul Goldschmidt's a really, really, really good first baseman. He's continuing to play like it, and I think he will be great the rest of this year. I mean, the worst season of his career at the plate was a 117 WRC plus in 2019 in his first year with St. Louis, and at 34 years old, he's just getting better and better. So, Paul Goldschmidt, my player of the week, just been going crazy this week.
He's been going crazy this year.
Oh yeah.
But this week alone, Paul Goldschmidt's always been one of those guys I've considered super underrated. Being able to watch him a lot when he was in Arizona, I kind of realized early on how good he really was, and I don't think most of the national baseball people understood it. And I think now with St. Louis, I don't know why, if that because it's more just towards the East Coast baseball or whatever, but I feel like people are starting to kind of take that recognition of how good Paul Goldschmidt really is, and especially this year with the season he's having. But this week alone, batting 400 or 500 on base, .7 WAR, it was pretty insane. But for my hitter this week, I ended up going with Evan Longoria from the San Francisco Giants. He recently got activated from the IL, and this week he went a 316 average, a 409 on base, an 1105 slugging for a 302 WRC plus and .6 WAR. Had 5 homers, 5 runs, 9 RBIs, and he did that all while having a .167 batting average on balls in play. So he was extremely low batting average on balls in play and still hit 316 with a 409 on base percentage. So Paul Goldschmidt, Evan Longoria, he might be the kick for that San Francisco Giants team that they've been looking for as that veteran to come in and kind of help solidify things and get them kickstarted.
Yeah, for sure. Evan Longoria is still a really a solid player at age 36, and I think he's going to be a nice piece for them. Coming in there at third base and really, really probably an improvement over what they've been running out there at third base. But then my pitcher this week was going to be Martine Perez, who we talked about a little bit earlier. But Martine Perez had 2 starts this week, and it was kind of a Martine Perez type of starts. With the low walks, being the primary thing there. Just in 14 innings, only had 2 walks, 7.07 strikeouts per nine. I believe that's like 18, 19 strikeouts. About 12 strikeouts this week, to 11 strikeouts, something like that. But
11.
I only gave up 1 run in his 2 starts, 14 innings. Pretty solid. Gets the ball on the ground a lot. It's kind of been a microcosm of his season so far, and averaging 7 innings a start there too. With that Texas bullpen, the way they've been, that's something that is very, very good for them to have a guy that's going to get the ball deep into the games. And Martin Perez has been really a large part of them getting back to 500 after their horrible start they had this year. So definitely like what he did this week, and I would have picked Sandy Alcantara or Aaron Nola or somebody, but they had 1 start, and I wanted to go with a guy with 2 starts, and Martin Perez had 2 really good starts. So definitely good on him.
Yeah, it's been good for Martin Perez to kind of have a rejuvenation of sorts back in Texas, where it all started for him. Just before I go to mine, I feel like we can just mention Sandy Alcantara in this segment every single week and just have it be like the show's one, because the man's insane. I mean, he went 8 innings with 14 strikeouts against the Braves this week. Like, I think we can just pick him all the
Yeah,
time if we really want to.
I believe he pitched into the 9th inning actually, and where he started the 9th inning and gave up maybe a hit, and then they pulled him, and then the guy that came in gave up couple runs, but
Yeah, that is right.
game, yeah.
I do
And
remember
Aaron Nola,
watching that.
same thing happened to Aaron Nola this week against Atlanta. He was pitching into the ninth inning. They were trying to get him the shutout. He gave up a double and then like two wild pitches or something, or wild pitch, and then the reliever came in and gave up the run. But definitely a couple guys that pitched well this week. So
Yeah, so to finish it up, my pitcher this week, I ended up going with Devin Smeltzer. A guy they got in return from Brian Dozier. Not a high rated prospect, but a guy who's had some major league time. This week he had 2 starts, went 7 innings against the Royals, 2 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, no earned runs. And then in 6 2/3 against the Tigers, gave up 6 hits, 2 earned runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. For the week, he had a .5 WAR with a 132 ERA and a 190 FIP. Like I mentioned, only the 1 walk, so it was a .66 walks per 9, and not too much on the strikeouts per 9 with 6.5 or 5.9. But overall, a feel good story for a guy who's not a high rated prospect, not really well known, but to have 2 really good starts this week and be in contention for our players of the week.
yeah, I want to shout out one more guy on the players of the week here, pitchers of the week, and we don't usually do this, but with relievers. But Josh Hader had 3 more saves this week, and I just wanted to shout him out because he has a 0 ERA so far this year. He has not given up an earned run yet, and a 110 FIP, which means that his ERA probably shouldn't be. He's gonna give up a run at some point this year, but he's not gonna give up many, and he's been insanely good. But he had 3 more saves this week, 3 more scoreless outings. I just wanted to shout him out real quick because we don't usually shout out relievers just because they don't pitch very often, but he's been insanely good.
Absolutely, it's very deserved for Josh Hader. I had saw that he hadn't given up a run this year, and I had to double check that because I didn't believe it. But yeah, you are right. He has not given up an earned run this year. That's insane so far as we're starting June. So it's pretty impressive. But anything else you want to wrap up on this week?
I believe that's it.
Alrighty, well that will do it for this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.